Toyota is the only company still selling a truck with a manual transmission in this part of the world, so naturally it gets less horsepower, less torque, and a torque peak 1100 RPM higher than the automatic. The last manual truck buyer walked in asking for engagement. Toyota handed them a cover charge. Only 2% of Tacoma buyers take the manual. Those are the people keeping this option alive. Toyota didn't kill the manual Tacoma. It made loyalists do the hard work. Peak torque arrives at 2,800 RPM. That is 1,100 RPM higher than the automatic version of this Tacoma. In a 4,600-pound truck, that peak arrives late enough to feel like a shift change. The short first gear gets you moving because the tuning of this engine isn't really interested in helping you until a little bit later. The engine doesn't come alive, per se. It's more like catching up. Toyota sells this as enthusiast-focused, and manual buyers already brought the enthusiasm. The truck makes them supply the patience. This 2.4-liter Turbo 4 wants to live in the mid-range, and it's quite happy there. The issue is how narrow that working window is when you arrive there. This manual Tacoma's power band keeps office hours open at 2,800 RPM, closed at 5,200 RPM. Miss that window and that soft rev limiter will remind you that Toyota is still in charge. In day-to-day driving, this 2.4-liter Turbo 4 doesn't lack any torque, and it just works. What it does lack is a little bit of punctuality. The manual hardware is not the problem. The clutch has a clear bite point, great weight, and you can modulate that clutch like a pro. The gearbox is great. The shift throws are long in that honest sort of truck kind of way, not in the worn out rental kind of way. Some frustration shows up after your feet and hands have done the work. This does have downshift rev matching. The button's easily accessible right here, but Toyota doesn't insist on it. It doesn't persist after every ignition cycle. And the good thing is heel and toe works properly. The throttle is responsive, and there's no extra nannies on board telling you have the brake pedal and the gas pedal pressed simultaneously. That's the right call. The manual just does its job and gets out of your way. Rev matched downshifts on a Toyota pickup, and I guess that's for those occasions when you want to have a spirited drive through the Home Depot parking lot. Toyota knew they had to calibrate this with 8 less horsepower and 7 less pounds of torque, plus they had to move the torque peak a little higher in the rev range than the automatic. The fix, though, was mechanical. A 4.3 final drive where the automatic runs a 3.583 plus a first gear aggressive enough to be a granny gear in most other applications. Best part is it works. From a stop, this does not feel slow. It also means that Toyota engineered a solution to a problem they created. That short final drive is the solution. I think first gear is where Toyota is saying sorry for the power band. Subscribers get notified when new episodes go live. Everybody else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to see when new episodes drop on this channel, well, that's what the subscribe button does. I'm legally required to tell you that this segment is sponsored by Go Clean. I'm ethically required to tell you that I use their waterless car wash. Here's the reality of filming cars. They don't have to be perfectly clean, but they have to be clean enough to survive a close-up. I call that video clean. For that job, this waterless car wash is ideal. A few sprays, quick wipe, and the car goes from someone drove it here to camera ready in minutes. I'm not going to oversell it. I use it, I like it, and it's in my kit now. That's video clean. Use code MAX15 for 15% off. Underneath this powertrain, the Tacoma chassis is good, and it doesn't come with any asterisks. The ratio of the steering rack is a little on the slow side, but it is perfectly appropriate for a truck. It is electrically assisted, of course, so there's not a lot of feel, but there's no artificial heft to this either. This truck tracks straight, it stays strong on center, you're never really correcting this thing, which is exactly what you want out of a modern pickup. Feedback is minimal, and after all, this This is a pickup truck on all seasons and a double wishbone front suspension, not a high-strung steering column asking you to make decisions. And for this mission, it's perfectly fine. The steering never tries to be sporty, which is how you know someone sensible was allowed into the meeting. When it comes to braking, the good news is the TRD Sport gets larger front brakes than what come on the Tacoma SR. Plus, the pedal has none of that initial mushiness you get from a lot of modern cars these days. The pedal's just right. It's easy to have slow, smooth, controlled stops, and then it's progressive as you get through pedal travel, depending on how much braking you need. For me, these brakes are fantastic, and it's almost like they're telepathic because I intuitively know exactly how much pedal pressure I need for the braking I want to accomplish. And even when you're hustling this into a corner, on corner entry, you can control the attitude of this Tacoma, and then as you release the pedal, it releases nice and smooth, doesn't upset the balance of the truck. On a mid-size pickup, brakes like this are not par for the course. Toyota got these brakes right. This platform's body on frame, obviously, double wishbones at the front, coil spring, multi-link setup at the rear. Turn-in response is truck honest, and the weight is where the weight is. Body roll is here, obviously, but it's well managed instead of being engineered out. These TRD Sport Tune dampers just do their job. Body and wheel control is excellent. There's no secondary movement, and there's no spring and damper argument happening underneath you. The only real reminder that this isn't a unibody is that separate movement you have between the body and the frame. And don't get me wrong, it never feels loose. This is a truck, and it's honest about being a truck. Ride quality is excellent, far better than I would have expected. And with the TRD Sport, we have these tall sidewalls, and what they've accomplished here is some real isolation. Plus, the dampers aren't trying to prove they went to engineering school to make this Tacoma calm over rough pavement. For urban duty, this is one of the best mid-size pickups on sale. Those sub-$50,000 crossovers trying to replace trucks for this use case should take notes on tire sidewall height. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, the merch store link is here, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this, less time worrying about industry access. No pressure, just an option. Inside, this Tacoma feels less conflicted. All the truck stuff is where the truck stuff should be. Trouble is, Tacoma manual buyers find little terms and conditions attached to the choice they made. Here in the driver's seat, there's decent headroom, there's decent leg room, but the hip point is on the tall side, and if you have short legs like I do, you're stepping up into this thing. Visibility is excellent in all directions. The A-pillars are relatively narrow. There's nothing really that gets in the way. Large outboard mirrors help, and of course this has cameras and sensors to help you with your parking adventures. The pedals and the shifter are in the right place. The steering wheel, on the other hand, I have a small objection to. For my taste and liking, the diameter of the steering wheel is maybe one size too large for this mid-size pickup. Otherwise, the steering wheel is the right shape, encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3, and otherwise doesn't get in the way. The digital instrument cluster is legible and doesn't try to be clever. Climate controls, thankfully, remain buttons, switches, and dials. As I mentioned earlier, the rev matching button is here, as is the auto hold button, but Toyota makes you ask for them because, again, they don't persist after each ignition cycle. These seats have proven to be comfortable over long-distance drives and in daily use, and what I like about them most is the cloth upholstery. In this modern automotive era, what happens with upholstery is they use some synthetic leather that's going to crack after 3 years. This cloth upholstery is comfortable, it's attractive, sure looks durable, and seems like it's going to last for many, many years. If you're complaining about any hard plastics in here, well, you're complaining about the wrong thing. This is a truck after all. Production and assembly is done by Toyota, so the materials are all very durable and panel gaps are consistent. Even the aluminum sport pedals are real aluminum, and that's a sentence I didn't expect to be writing in 2026. This small cab and the short bed are the price of admission for the manual. Want 3 pedals? Well, Toyota starts negotiating with the truck around it. Underseat storage, 60/40 folding rear seat backs with flip forward cushions, and enough bin space to stop being annoying. And there's a full-size spare under the bed. This is still a proper truck. The 8-inch infotainment screen is base spec and it knows it, but it works exactly as it should. Reality is Toyota's infotainment system isn't a reason to buy this truck. It isn't a reason not to either. That JBL speaker pops out of the dash to become a Bluetooth speaker. It's probably the only piece of cabin theater in this truck, but it has earned its right to be here. If this gave you more information than a brochure or a press release, hit like. It tells YouTube to share this episode with more people like you. Interested in an episode like this takes just a second. That's what this truck told me after a week behind the wheel. Here's what owners are saying, and these are not casual manual buyers. A 2% take rate means almost nobody ends up here by accident. They read the forums, waited years, ignored the automatic, and bought the manual with both eyes open. So when they keep circling the same problems, it's not buyer's remorse. According to owners, the first to second shift with this manual Tacoma has a learning curve. A multi-decade manual veteran on Tacoma World reported that only 1 in 5 starts from first to second feels clean after months of ownership. Try a third to fourth clutchless upshift and count how long it takes before the synchro accepts the gear. That's the emissions programming you live with on every upshift. The rev matching system defaults to off every time you start the truck. Auto hold resets too. There's no way to make either of them persist. And the fuel tank, a little over 18 gallons versus a little over 23 in the previous gen. Owners report 275 to 350 miles of real-world range. For a truck that's supposed to take you places, this is the "I wish I'd known that" item that keeps coming back. If you own one of these or have some quality seat time behind the wheel of one of these, let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong, because real-world ownership experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. This is the uncomfortable part. The Tacoma manual isn't bad because it has a manual. The clutch is good, the shifter's honest, the truck rides better than expected and still feels like a proper pickup. The lazy version of this review would be easy. Bad truck, bad manual, buy something else. This is a fantastic truck with one very specific decision tree wrapped around the transmission. Toyota says it built for enthusiasts. The problem is everything Toyota built around the manual: the detune, the later torque peak, the shorter final drive, the mandatory short bed, the mandatory small cab, and the small fuel tank. Nobody bought this truck for value. Nobody bought it for performance either. They bought it on principle. They're the ones keeping the manual alive in this segment, and Toyota gave them a truck that comes with an engineering apology. This is for the buyer who walked into the dealer already committed to 3 pedals. Not curious, not cross-shopping, committed. They know the automatic is easier to live with, and they know the manual makes less sense on paper. They're buying this because the point was never about convenience. Everyone else, the casual enthusiast, the first manual truck customer, drives both on a test loop and then signs the paperwork for the automatic. Toyota still thinks that manual truck buyers are worth keeping. Maybe so. Buy this truck if the automatic was never an option for you. I'm grateful that Toyota hasn't killed the manual Tacoma. They kept it alive, but then made the buyer explain why he still wanted it. That's the strange part. Underneath this powertrain, the truck is really good. It rides well, it brakes well, the clutch and the shifter are not your enemy. This should have been the enthusiast cheat code, the last available manual pickup truck in this part of the world, built for people who refuse to let the idea die. Instead, Toyota built a great truck that happens to have a powertrain with a couple of small compromises. And then they asked Tacoma manual enthusiasts to cover the difference. That's the Tacoma manual. Subscribe if you want to see more episodes like this. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and the merch store is open if you want to help support more of these. See you on the next one.